We're on.
We're on?
We're on.
I gotta act like I'm normal again. That ain't happening. Anyway, today we're gonna talk about, what are we talking about? Oh yeah, the ideas of communism and how they are leaving their marks on our families. Marx as in Karl Marx.
M-A-R-X.
M-A-R-X, for those of us who are completely illiterate like me. But anyway, first I wanted to talk about something I posted on Facebook, and I got a little bit of response. Was I said, does anyone remember my band from the 70s? Gary and the Asthmatics. We had our
No?
we had our first hit was Wheezin' the Oldies. One of my
Gary's a rock star.
yeah, I was, yeah. And then my first hit on the album was I Would Get in the Back Seat with You, but I Forgot My Inhaler. Anyway,
He used to wear leather pants and everything.
yeah, I was bad to the bone, really.
Oh, yeah.
I believe it.
So today we have, again, I already introduced you, Representative Janine Nodder, and our candidate for governor last time, Karen Testerman. And they're both here with us today to talk about communism and how it's basically infiltrated the family, how its premises have infiltrated the family, whether we like it or not, by different means. I mean, it's been almost you would kind of say a conspiracy. I'd like to believe that people aren't that evil and it is not a conspiracy. It's just a culmination of bad things going on. Mm-hmm. But the basic premise of dividing the family so that the state becomes the head of the family is as old as Karl Marx and Stalin. But first, a lot of people probably have not read the Communist Manifesto. So I was going to read a few of the premises of communism, and then we'll allow our guests to introduce themselves. I have to take these off to read. And I read out loud. I read it very badly, so live with it. Manifesto. One of their edicts is abolition of property rights. And if everybody remembers, in 2005, the United States Supreme Court decided that Pfizer had more right to the property in New London, Connecticut than Suzette Kelo did.
I remember that, yeah.
And I was one of the rebels in Ware that was trying to take Judge Souter's house from him.
Where?
Ware, yeah.
Ba-dum-bum.
A progressive, number two, a heavy progressive graduated income tax. The Constitution in 1913 had to be changed to allow that type of income tax. And now we're stuck with the government getting bigger and bigger and stealing more and more of our money. The abolition of all rights of inheritance. Confiscation of property. This is a really weird one. It's confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels. I guess that'd be me.
Foreign and domestic, yeah.
I guess I'm done for.
Oh.
5, centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank. And a lot of people don't know the Federal Reserve was established in 1913. So a lot of bad things happened in 1913. That's probably why it's 13. We should probably worry about 2013. That's going to...
Some people worry about 2012, but
try
it's
a decaphobia.
2013 is really the bad year, I guess.
Right, it is, yeah. No, I'm not going to skip over that one. There's a few others that are a little bit more complicated. Let's see. The number 9, combination of agriculture, manufacturing industry, global abolition of all the distinctions between town and country. So in other words, one of their premises is to get rid of all local identity.
Oh, okay. So no sovereignty.
No sovereignty
yeah.
of your town, your city, your
Interesting.
state.
Huh.
And if one of the worst things that happened as a result of the Civil War is a centralization of power in the hands of the federal government. If there's anything we did wrong in the Civil War, that was it. The federal government became the end-all and be-all, And as a legislator, Janine, this is Janine's freshman year, I'm sure she's seen how many times laws that we have or we're trying to do in the state we're subjugated by what the federal government tells us we can and can't do. And it's amazing. I was floored my first couple of years there.
So that happens a lot. That's a
All the
common
time.
instance. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Really?
yeah. An example would be the saltwater fishing license. This is a simple example, but I was involved in it. The federal government said the state of New Hampshire has to impose a saltwater fishing license or the federal government was going to do it to us. And anybody who knows anything about the Constitution, the federal government has control over commerce.
Sure.
But if you go down with your buddy to the docks off Portsmouth or go off the coast within the legal limit, that has nothing to do with commerce.
Right.
You're pulling up a couple cod, that's not commerce.
Right. Right.
If a fishing boat goes out and pulls in, hundreds and thousands of them, well, yeah, that's commerce.
Right. Yeah.
But they have no constitutional authority to do that.
Okay.
But they do it all the time.
Interesting.
And the 10th one is free education for all children in public schools and the abolition of children's factory labor and stuff like that. Free education is actually something that was founded in the state constitution where it told cities and towns to collect a certain percentage of their taxes for education, but it was for a different motivation. The idea was the best way to maintain liberty is for children to be educated as to their social obligations, morality. Morality was a big part, piety and everything else. And the Bible was one of the big
The Bible
Things that
was the textbook.
the textbook, right?
Right.
So anyway, that was basically, I wanted to go over that because a lot of people hear about the Communist Manifesto and probably don't have any idea what that means.
Well, going back to your idea about commerce, isn't that along the same lines as mandating from the federal government that all children under a certain age have to have life vests on when they're in the water?
Oh yeah, all kinds of stuff.
I mean, under the guise of safety, we
Oh, yeah.
tell parents, we override parental authority and tell them what they have to do, not educate them and let them set up.
Right.
And Rick Perry does the same thing when he's mandating that you have to get certain vaccinations. He's telling you that parents aren't the ones that can make the decision. The individual can't make the decision if given the proper information, but the government has to do it.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, 'cause
Big
they
Brother.
love you.
Yes.
But anyway, so I just wanted to get those 10 out of the way because I was sure that a lot of people had never even heard them, and you hear references to it, but those are a couple of the key ones. But now I'd like our guest to introduce Representative Janine
Janine Nodder, thank you.
Want to take your glasses off? Does that help?
No,
Oh.
not really. Is a freshman year, and I just wanted to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about you, how you got involved in this crazy thing called politics.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have my own series, so you'd have to watch it to catch up on the whole story. It's a long story. I was a freelance writer in the late 80s, and just from there, and then I was at home for 15 years with kids, so I didn't do much of anything.
I wouldn't
The
say
kids got
that's
bigger.
not much of anything.
Well, I was in the home
You
taking
didn't
care of
pull
the
your
kids.
hair out, obviously, so that's pretty darn good.
That could be a wig.
No,
Oh,
no,
That could
no,
be a
it's
wig.
real.
Sorry. Gary makes these wild assumptions, and then I have to, reel him back in.
Yeah, he's really good at that.
Anyway, please continue.
I don't know where I would start, but anyway, you just mentioned the Communist Manifesto, and there's 10 points to it. I just wanted to echo on that just a couple of things. Like number one, about the abolition of property and land. Okay, we have eminent domain. That means the government can come and take your property. All right, done. We have that. A heavy and progressive graduated income tax. We've got it. 5, the centralization of the bank. Okay, the Federal Reserve.
Right?
Number 1, it's not federal. Number 2, there are no reserves. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So I did a show on money before, so.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah, people have huge misconceptions about what the Federal Reserve actually is, and it is a misnomer. You're right. Federal Reserve, it's not.
There is a book called Creature Jekyll, Creature at Jekyll Island. I have to look that up. Do you happen to know the book I'm talking
No,
about?
I don't.
All right, I will
I'm
find
sorry.
out the name of the book, and it has some creature is in the title, and the island and
Right,
Jekyll.
right.
So
I might be able to find it online.
try to Google that. And it's all about the Federal Reserve. It's a very big book and how it all started. And there's also kind of like built-in cliff notes in the front, so you don't even have to read the whole book if you don't want to.
Well, you can actually go online to the YouTube and look for the Federal Reserve, because there's a 22-part series
Oh, okay.
where they totally explain how it got started, the history, what it does. But it's like 22 different videos
Right.
that explain the Federal Reserve, which is not federal but is
No.
private.
Right.
Jekyll Island?
Jekyll Island?
That must be it.
Could be. Is it-
About the creature from Jekyll Island.
See, I got Creature, Jekyll, and Island.
Yeah,
That's
a second look at the
and I
Federal
knew it went in a
Reserve.
sentence somehow.
The author is G. Edward Griffin, for anyone who's looking
That's
for
the
it.
man, G. Edward Griffin.
And he just looked that up, so now he's officially labeled as domestic terrorist.
Oh, well,
Oh,
see, that's
right.
on the
Yeah,
list too.
yeah,
that
nice
that
going,
was.
Matt.
I think
Nice.
I'm already on the no-fly list.
Yeah.
It's
I
all
want
right.
to get a T-shirt that says I'm a domestic terrorist. I'm proud of it.
That's number 4 in the Communist
You didn't
Manifesto.
turn yourself in when they
No,
were
no,
trying
not
to-
yet.
Would you
Not
wear it
yet.
at the airport? Is the question.
I don't like airports.
Okay.
Oh, I don't either. Do you know what happened since all this mess started? Okay, I told you I was a freelance writer. Well, the publisher of the New American Magazine is John McManus.
Yeah.
And a lot of people call him Jack, close friends. I saw him at the airport one day, and I yelled, "Hi, Jack! I got arrested!"
Oh, no way.
For real?
No way.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
Oh.
she's good. She said that with a straight face.
I
She's
know, she
good.
did. She got me.
Yeah, we like you.
And I'm a
Thank
jerk.
you.
Yes, that's good.
Hi, Jack.
Well, maybe Gary one day will tell you about the paratroopers.
No.
We've already heard about that,
Oh,
actually.
did you?
Yeah.
Every state rep that gets on mentions the paratroopers.
Yeah.
And Karen, on to you, young lady. You ran for governor, and
I
you've done
did.
all kinds of stuff. I've been involved with Karen for 10 years.
That's interesting. You never
Yeah,
told me,
right
Karen.
there.
Involves that. Ooh, scandal.
Yeah, scandal. But she's been helping with family issues at the legislative level for 10 years when she was head of family research.
Cornerstone
Policy Research, whatever. It was one of those researchers.
I know.
And
I did that. I mean, when we named the organization, we named it so that we could eventually be CPR for New Hampshire.
okay, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I like that.
And CP, that is cool. I didn't know that. Anyway, so tell us a little about yourself, young lady.
Well, I got involved with New Hampshire politics probably early on when we started studying Goals 2000, which is really a tie-in to our subject tonight. And we were the only state in the Union to turn down the federal carrot, I would say, which would eventually become basically a mandate from the federal government to institute our curriculum at the local level. And at the time, Ovid Law Montaigne was the chairman of the Board of Education.
Right.
So we had a departure of minds on that. I mean, as far, and one of the things that we did do was there was a gentleman.
He's changed his tune on that, I think.
Yes, he has.
Yeah, because you were a little bit more seeing into the future a bit better than he was apparently at the time.
I think so, but at any rate, by turning it down, we did cause the U.S. Congress to adjust their rules so that individual school districts could sign on with Goals 2000, and that was sort of a defeat for us in a way. But one of the things that we did was there's a man in the Midwest by the last name of Patrick who actually has laid out Goals 2000's curriculum,
Right.
the whole package, side by side with the Communist Manifesto, and highlighted in red those things that were in common, and there
Interesting.
were lots of them.
Yeah.
Huh.
So our federal government, through the Department of Education, was trying to accomplish
I
free
used-
education for all.
I used to know a woman from Cuba. She escaped
Is this
from
another
Cuba.
joke? 'Cause I'm
No,
not
no.
going to
This
get this
is
either.
serious.
Yeah, we won't fall for that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Jeff.
The librarian at my high school in California, she talked to me one day about how it was when they lived in Cuba. She said the government takes your kids away when they're little, and they're taught, to be cogs in
Yeah.
the wheel.
Indoctrinated,
Indoctrinate,
basically. Yeah.
exactly. So they don't even belong to you. And
Yeah.
I watched this movie, Agenda. I believe you have a copy too.
Yep.
And that's the plan. And the agenda is for the government to take the children when they're babies and start
Well,
indoctrinating them.
That's the whole from cradle to grave, the government nanny
Right.
philosophy, and that's what you found in Goals 2000.
And when you're young and you don't have any money, it sounds good, like, oh,
Right.
cool, we get everything free. But you don't understand. If you don't work for what you have, you're not going to have anything. It brings everyone down to the lowest common denominator, and we all, live in.
Well, the other interesting
Poor,
thing
yeah,
is
all
is
of
that
us.
I spoke to a woman who was in Kansas at the time, and she'd moved up to New Hampshire. And when she had her first child, of course, the social workers came in and said, we'd like to come and visit you after a couple of weeks to see how you're doing, if you're able to take care of your little girl and that was just born to you. And so she signed up for it, and then what happened was they kept coming, and they kept coming, and then they told her after 6 weeks, you're too heavy. You're not losing enough weight. And she told them at that time she wanted off of their list. She didn't want to have them in the home anymore. And she said it wasn't until she moved to New Hampshire that she got rid of them.
Live free or die.
Yeah.
Well, even then, it's still tough in New Hampshire. It's not.
It's creeping
The
into
shackles
New
are
Hampshire.
not all
right?
gone when you cross the state border, because the federal government has its tentacles in everything.
Right. Well, we started off down this road because we were talking about the family, too. And Stalin said, in his own words, if you want to destroy a society, you will destroy the family. And when you've got the greatest country on the face of the earth in America, why would you want to destroy it? Well, and how would you dismantle it? And that's what really Agenda's about.
Yes. Yeah, it's all the idea that we might get a phone call.
Oh, we have a call. I'll grab
It's
it.
a call-in show?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
yeah. We were all technical and everything.
Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who's this?
Yeah, this is Steve.
Hi,
Hello?
Steve. Yes,
Hi,
you're on
Steve.
the air.
Yeah, okay. I just turned this program on. I just heard you talking about Cuba. It's funny, I just met somebody probably about 3 months ago, an older couple, and I was talking with them, and this older couple says what's happening in America right now is slowly starting to turn into Cuba. And he told me that in Cuba before, right when Castro was coming in and Che and all those guys, he said that they were telling people, you don't need guns because we're going to protect you. You're not going to need health, worry about health insurance. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. When all the people agreed to do what they wanted them to do, they ended up breaking down doors, pulling people out of the house, shooting them in the streets. Communism and Marxism is right. It's coming into America right now, like this lady was just saying about the kids, they're overweight or whatever. We don't need the government to do this.
Right.
It's very dangerous, and this is what this guy from Cuba says. He can see right now it happening in America, and if we're not careful, it's going to come here too. But pretty interesting show. Thanks.
All right, thank you,
Thank you,
Steve.
Steve.
Elian Gonzalez.
Oh, wait. No, this is funnier. Jane Fonda. I was reading a UK.
I'm not a fan.
No,
I'm not
I was
fond
reading
of
a
Jane.
UK article about Jane Fonda. She says one of her biggest regrets was that she didn't sleep with Che Guevara.
Huh.
Huh. It wasn't one of my regrets.
I
I'm
don't
saying that's what
get
Jane
it.
Fonda.
Oh,
did.
right.
It was
I
not
don't
me.
get
Oh, I thought you were.
No,
I thought you were
no.
revealing something
No,
on
no,
the
no,
air,
anyway,
Gary.
let's
Oh.
just-
When you mentioned her name, I made a face, and
Oh, my.
I hope your viewers know why I made a face, because during the Vietnam War, she went to Vietnam, visited the communists. It was a prisoner.
Yeah.
They called
In
it the
the
Hanoi
Hanoi.
Hilton.
Yeah.
It was in Hanoi. The prisoners called it the Hanoi Hilton. and they thought, wow, there's an American actress here. They passed her notes, help us, tell them we're being tortured. She gave the notes to the communists, and our men, our American POWs, were tortured because of Jane Fonda. And to this day, there aren't too many Vietnam veterans that are fond of Jane.
No,
Right.
actually,
Well-
when she was out in California, her brother Peter Fonda recruited the Hells Angels to protect her after her foray to the
Really?
Vietnam. Oh yeah,
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, because she was there were people throwing stuff at
Oh,
her
sure.
house and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, they were trying. There was a women's group that was trying to bring her to New Hampshire.
Oh, yes. That was
Earlier
at
this
the
year.
Nashua Technical College. I'm
Right.
like, I live
Oh,
near there.
well.
I don't want her near my
It was very interesting. It got out very
Yes.
quickly
Yeah.
that she was, in fact, invited.
Uninvited.
And
yes.
within 24 hours, she was uninvited because the Vietnam vets.
Yeah, good.
Now, see,
Absolutely.
the
That's
younger
enough of that.
generation knows, like people my age and younger, that they know that she started the aerobics, the whole thing with aerobics.
Right,
Right.
right.
And, they don't understand, well, why don't you like Jane Fonda? Well, that's why. It was
Yeah.
what she did before. There was at one point where she sort of made an apology, but not really.
Well, I was going to ask if she's ever really publicly addressed it.
She
No,
said,
she
if I
spent
remember
millions of
correctly,
her own money supporting all these left-wing nutbag organizations.
Yeah.
She said she
Millions.
was sorry
Really?
for some of the things she did and very proud of other things she did, but she never specified what she
Oh,
was proud
okay.
of and what she wasn't proud
Gotcha.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah, she probably regrets not sleeping with Che Guevara. That's what.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
That's
I digress a bit. So
Well-
anyway, we're talking about the breakdown of the family and how that has a lot. One of the aspects of the breakdown of the family that Marx talks about is the reason you break down. The problem with anything you read, and the viewers should know this. If they don't, you're going to find out. Most great lies start out with truth. If it's a really good lie, it begins with truth and then leads you astray. So when I was reading the manifesto, it was kind of funny because it started out pretty good. Because part of the problem was that you had that the rich and aimless were basically using employees as an extension of their machines. And I know I've been a machinist my whole life, so I do know there are places like that.
Sure.
That if you walk away from your machine for more than 2 minutes to go to the bathroom, they start yelling at you. I mean,
Yeah.
screaming at you like you're, it's horrible. And now, I mean, because greed is, the Bible says money is the love of money is the root of all evil, and it's the case in industry. And so he starts out with that, basically talking about that, and then talks about how we have to break up the family because industry has used has already so exploited the children of those peasants, basically, or the working class. Because at that time, in the 1850s, if somebody like me would have a job in a business, it would be necessary for me to bring my 10-year-old son
Yeah.
to work, because otherwise I can't afford to eat.
Right.
It was that bad. There was that abusive. And it was the immorality of industry that laid the foundation for people like Marx to get a hold on people like in America. I mean, you look at what's happening in China. They've got one industry that makes all those nice little parts for your iPhone and all that. The people are jumping off the damn balcony
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
to kill themselves because they can't handle the pressure anymore.
Yeah.
And yet some millionaire is justified in his mind, well, I'm paying them more than they would in the fields.
Right.
And somehow that makes it moral, and it doesn't. And it's immorality that leads to more immorality, which is what we have in communism.
Well, it's interesting, too, because I've been reading The Naked Communist by Leon Skousen, and he says in here that...
That you mean that figuratively,
What?
the naked communist.
The naked...
Well, I mean, I'm sure communists are nude sometimes.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Anyway, go ahead.
Well,
They can
I'm
afford
just
your clothes.
quoting the name of the book.
Yeah.
I had no
sorry.
inference behind it. However,
Anyway.
We take things too literally.
Yeah.
We apologize.
sometimes you have to, but
Yeah.
sometimes it also helps to define the terms that you're using,
Yes.
Yes.
because many people today, many of our words have been co-opted.
Yeah, they do that deliberately.
things,
They, You learn that from reading 1984, how they changed the, like, military
Newspeak.
intelligence, stuff like
Yes.
that.
But Leon Skousen says that many people assume that Marx was all about economy. But really, if you go into it, he had an ideological warfare going on, and he says we must combat religion. These are Karl Marx's words, or I take it back. These are Lenin's words.
Okay.
We must combat religion. This is the ABC of materialism and consequently of Marxism. And another discipline that declared that when they took over, they said, quote, God will be banished from the laboratories as well as from the schools.
Yes.
And
he's
here
been
we
managed.
are. I mean, you know, this is yet one more place. The objective of these atheists was, what they were trying to establish, in the words of Lenin, we must hate. Hatred is the basis of communism. Children must be taught to hate their parents if they are not communists. And so what are we doing in our schools? But driving a wedge between parents and their children, because they tell the kids, don't go home and tell your parents about this because they won't understand.
Yeah.
And
They're also teaching stuff that are not the values of the general
exactly,
public.
because they don't
deliberately.
understand. Right.
Right, 'cause we're
Parents
too
won't
ignorant.
understand. So because your parents won't understand, you keep your values here at school. We'll talk to you about using condoms and homosexuality and other things like that in the school context, but please don't go home and tell your parents about that.
Here's one of the quotes from, you can read that one.
Okay, sure. There are, besides, eternal truths, such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society, but communism abolishes eternal truths. It abolishes all religion and all morality instead of constituting them on a new basis. It therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experience.
Exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a
Yeah.
good reader.
Oh, thank you.
That's why I had him do it.
I have trouble with that one word, truths. That THS combination is very difficult for me.
Hey, since you have the Google there, could you look up a book called Hijacked? See who the author is?
Yes.
Because we had that caller earlier about Cuba. There was a book I read.
Oh, I thought you were just going to keep playing on that one joke and
No,
just
no, no, no,
run
no.
that into the...
And
That's what I thought too.
And the book I... Go ahead, Karen.
That's all right. And I think this is very interesting because in their commissar of education in Russia,
Yep.
Anatoly Lunacharsky, said, we hate Christians and Christianity. And that's what's happening in America today. I mean, if you're a Christian, then,
Then you're
you
called
are
hateful and
isolated.
bigoted,
You're
yes.
called hateful and bigoted. They use the, what do they call that technique? Oh, shoot. Straight out ahead.
Reverse psycho.
I get that all the
there
time.
there is a technique that was developed to bring about consensus, and it is used many, many times in our schools when you have a set of parents that are in opposition to what the school is trying to promote.
Right.
They will put you on a committee, usually in the minority, usually a third of the, say they have a committee of 12, 4 people on it will be those people who are in objection to it. So that once you've met as a committee and you find that you've aired your opinions, etc., you're thinking everybody's on the same playing field with you, then the fact that you now have lost by a democratic vote,
Right.
then you've had some skin in the game, and you agree that this is your idea just didn't come over.
Right.
And yet that is designed so that that's how they will minimize the objection that they might
Slowly manipulate you to believe you are actually taking part in something when they're
Exactly.
manipulating them to begin with by forcing you to be in a non-winning, give you a non-winning hand, and
Exactly.
then
It's
pretend
called-
you were playing the game.
Right. It's called the Delphi technique. And if you go up on CNHT, what is it? Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers
Yep.
website. On the left-hand side, there's a description of the Delphi technique and also some ideas about how you can combat it.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's also we're playing off the kid. Children are just trying to. I think one of the biggest problems we have with kids is they just want to get along. Little kids don't want to stand out. So you put a kid in a room, and he's like you say, you put him in with 12 kids, and there's 4 of them that actually have conservative beliefs. You're deliberately putting that children in a difficult situation because he doesn't really want to stand out.
Right.
And it's only a rebellious little bugger that's actually to stand up and say, well, I didn't agree with anybody in this group, or
Right.
it's very difficult for them to do that.
Right.
So it's just
Well,
manipulating.
you run into that, I'm sure, in the steakhouse too, because you have 400 people, and if the people surrounding you are in disagreement with you, it makes it very hard to stand up, doesn't it?
Well, we all get along, though, so when I don't vote with the man next to me, he'll pick on me, but he doesn't mean it.
I found
Until we get to the gambling bill, it's his.
Oh, great!
that should be
There
fun.
you go.
He's a sponsor, and he just looks at me. We have a disagreement. He probably won't bring me chocolate anymore.
Oh.
No, just kidding.
Well, that must be frustrating. I found something called Hijacked by Dave Hersham, but I don't think this is the book you were describing.
No, he was a Black Panther. He grew up in San Bernardino, California, and he hijacked a plane to Cuba because he wanted to rally support for the Black
Yes.
Panthers. I don't even remember which.
And he ended
was it
up
the
coming
70s?
back.
Oh,
He ended
and
up
kissed
coming
the ground.
Kissed
Yes.
the ground, yes. And I can't think of his name. He was a Black Panther.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think
you read it
I
too.
think that might have been. Yeah, never mind. I'm getting way too far off.
Yeah, I'm not.
But
not
yeah,
finding it.
it's anyway.
And he actually came back and worked with Leon Skousen on constitutions, on the Center for
Hard
Constitutional
lesson
Studies.
learned, but good for
Oh,
him.
yeah. But he came back and he was promoting the Constitution and the value of the Constitution.
Well, I was listening to something, I don't know, a long time ago on YouTube. It was a Russian spy who had defected to the United States. I've forgotten his name. And he was talking about what was going on in America back in the 80s. And he was explaining that, in effect, we have what the Russians call useful idiots. Okay? You take a lot of like the college professor, the elites. Those are what he calls useful idiots, in that they see the plight of the working man and some of the injustices, and there are always injustices in society.
Of course, yeah.
And they talk about the ills of capitalism and stuff like that. And because they're so idealistic that everybody should get along and everybody should get a piece of the pie and everything else, that they'll teach that. And what happens is when communism uses them as useful idiots, and then once they take over, the first people they have to kill are the useful idiots because once communism takes over, they see the reality of it, like your Black Panther, they see the reality of what really means,
Sure.
and then those useful idiots become a danger to the structure itself.
Okay.
So as soon as they take over, they kill them.
Yeah.
That's it's just a matter of fact. That's what they have to do because
Yeah.
their idealism is the same thing that got them in power, is the same thing that would undermine their power once they were there.
Sure.
I just thought of another good book, The Highest Virtue. It's about the Russian Revolution. It's all about the useful idiots and how.
So when
they
you're
get killed.
raising these children,
well, I was home
and
for
you were
15
doing
years,
nothing,
so,
you were doing
was
nothing, you were
reading.
doing a lot of reading, it sounds like.
I did do a lot of reading.
Yeah, very
That's how I
good.
got my daughter. It was the Russian Revolution, so I was freezing, and just, you read a book vicariously.
Yeah, it's amazing how many inroads that the communist ideas have actually gotten in the United States. I mean, you look at just compared to 30 or 40 years ago, our families are completely broken down, and a lot of that was the feminist movement, which is another communist premise or a way to destroy the family. And Marx talks about that also, how that.
Well, and that's the ultimate goal too in redefining the family, because once you redefine what marriage is, then you've now laid the groundwork so that you've minimalized its real impact.
Right.
You no longer look at it as the fundamental economic engine, the basic unit of government. You don't look at it as for all the value that it gives to society as a whole and to building the community. And Rick Santorum has it right. It takes a village. I mean,
No,
it takes a
family.
family.
This
it
is,
takes a family
Hillary said
to
it was a
raise
family.
the village.
This is
Right.
Steve, our earlier caller, calling back. Hi, Steve. What's up?
Hi, it's me again. Real quickly, I want you to Google something, all you people there. You got a pencil and paper?
Right here.
Yeah.
Some of us do.
You there?
Yeah.
Okay, public employees teach kids gay sex. This happened in the year of May 9th, year 2000, and there's quite a bit on it. It tells you exactly what was happening in the schools in Massachusetts.
Oh, that
Forget the schools
And
in
what they were
Massachusetts.
doing with the kids without the parents' consent. But Google search "public employees teach kids gay sex."
Oh, that was-
You're not gonna believe what you're gonna see. This
Well-
actually happened in Massachusetts.
Oh, that- you're talking-
It's happening in New Hampshire too.
Oh,
It's
it is?
been oh yes.
You
It's
said, Karen says it's happening in New Hampshire too, but I think you're specifically referring to the gentleman that went in and asked pull his kids
David.
out of.
David Parker.
Yeah, he moved to
Oh.
New Hampshire too.
I remember
Yeah.
hearing
Oh
about
no,
this, yeah.
that guy you're talking
He came
about. I think that
afterwards,
was out in Newton, Mass. He was
Yeah.
something about it was a booklet
Right.
that he didn't want his kid to read.
Yeah, and they
But this is something different. This happened in the year 2000, and actually,
This is Scott.
it happened behind the kids. I mean, the parents' back. They weren't even told about it, but they were teaching them all this really filthy ways to have sex, and it said that it was okay to do. I mean, the people out in Massachusetts were up in arms. They went crazy, but you have to. I can't explain the whole thing to you. There's quite a bit to it. But Google search that public employees teach kids gay sex. But
Scott Whiteman, was that the name
what
of it?
happened
Scott
right now
Whiteman.
in New Hampshire and all over the United States is they're actually making it mandatory now to teach gay sex and to teach people to accept the gay lifestyle. That should be done at home, behind closed doors or whatever. We don't need public employees telling our kids what to do and what not to do, like you're too fat or whatever. But anyways, take a look at this. You'll be amazed.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
That's actually, I say it's happened in New Hampshire. That was one of the things that was going on at Souhegan High School when the community came into the school board when they were supposed to be being taught or introducing the sex ed curriculum that was going to be had. And this
Yes.
was in 1994, 1995. And what we found was that this was the introduction to the school board, mind you. The students had been, or the teachers had already been trained, the school books had been taught, and they were already implementing a program called The Journey. And what one of the ladies who was sitting next to me when I first found out about this leaned over to me and asked me if sex education at Souhegan was going to be taught to her boys by the lesbian teacher, and that's exactly what was going on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's there's really no place for that in the schools. I mean,
No,
and
it's value education, and we should not have value education in our public schools. It should be, that's something that's being taught, should be taught at home. What the schools need to teach and what they are not teaching are the very basic
The 3 R's.
The three
Reading,
R's.
writing, arithmetic.
Reading, writing, and how do you compute? And that's the problem that I heard from the employers when they wanted to have student or workers come in. All they want at the very basic level is for somebody to be able to read the instructions, to be able to communicate those instructions to somebody else, and to be able to compute if they had to add 2 + 2 or 5
Right,
times
right.
10.
It's just unconscionable that we're spending. It's one thing for somebody to have a point of view. It's like, for instance, much to do is made about not allowing prayer in school. A lot is said you can't teach religion in school. You can't teach values in school, but yet they go out of their way to teach stuff that is undermining those same values that the kids are being taught in home. It's counterproductive, and it's also unnecessary.
Which
I
is-
mean,
And
I want to clarify something, though. Is it the position of all of you that there should be no sex education taught in school?
I don't think there's any evidence
I
that's
pull my
helped
kids-
anybody.
I pull my kids out.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I have 6, and
You
actually,
don't think teaching it in school has any effect? I mean, I haven't looked at any stats, but you don't think it has any use at all in terms of
it's not
preventing
it's not their
It's not
place.
their
preventing
place.
teen pregnancy
It,
and
No.
You don't prevent teen pregnancy, and teen pregnancy is a misnomer in the first place because most people, when they, in several years ago, were teenagers when they were pregnant, but they were pregnant within the context of the marriage.
Oh, I
well,
lost my pen.
that's all right. We'll grab this. We'll grab this call. Hi.
Thank you very much, Karen. See ya.
Oh, she's leaving.
Hi, how you doing?
She didn't like you.
Oh, it's Norm. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I agree with you. I don't think that teaching homosexuality in schools, even though I am, I don't agree it should be taught in schools. I do not believe in the gay lesbian alliances club in the schools because I think it really causes a lot more confusion and a lot more attention towards the gay and lesbian. I think it should be, I just don't approve it. I have to agree with you on that.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Norm, is over time, they've had sex education was really started being real big during the 70s to try to reduce teen pregnancy, and teen pregnancy's gone up.
Right, and
Yeah.
as well as STDs.
Well, I can remember standing at the Northwest Elementary School.
Yeah.
My granddaughter was in the first grade, and I can remember them talking about having these young kids, I think they were in the third grade, getting a banana and showing how to put a condom on on that, and I think that's totally absurd,
I think at that age it is absolutely.
Yeah.
you know? And,
Yeah.
and I think it should be, I think it really should be up to the parent, not the
Parents don't do it,
so-called
though.
professionals.
Well, that's not
In a lot of homes,
out
parents
of
don't do
sight,
it.
out of mind.
Yeah, the other thing too is parents don't do it because they think the school is. You know,
Right.
if in other words, if it was left alone, I mean, the kid would be curious and ask the parent stuff, but because they're being taught in school, the parents are allowed to basically.
I don't think parents have enough faith in themselves. You know, you leave nature alone. Nature knows what to do, and humans are part of nature. So, parents should have it in them to know how to explain things to their kids, but they don't have faith in
See,
themselves.
I like what you said, going back to the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Exactly. We
Yeah,
don't need all
Because
that
we're
other stuff in
forgetting
school.
what we're there for. We're forgetting that education should become that priority because what's going to happen would be scary to see what would happen in the near future if we don't get the basics down first.
Yep. Thank you very much, Norm. You're
Thank
absolutely
you.
right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Norm.
Yeah, it's over time it has not helped.
How do you
I'll give you an example. I am positive, absolutely 100% positive, that they have extensive sex education in New York City. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you think it's a very liberal?
probably? Yeah, I would
Okay.
assume that. Yeah.
And you would presume if sex education, you would presume if sex education was a positive effect, had a positive effect on kids, that the abortion rate and the teen pregnancy rate would be down.
I see where you're going, but I don't think that proves anything.
It-
How do you know it doesn't lower the rate?
Well-
I mean, there's all kinds of other factors.
There's other factors, but let me just tell you this: that in New York City last year, more black children were aborted than born.
Right.
I've read that, yeah.
Oh,
That's not stunning.
That's hideous. But I don't think that. But I don't think that proves that sex education isn't helpful.
I'm telling you that there's not one of those abortions, or there might be one, but I am positive the vast majority of those abortions, those children understood the ramifications of having sex and had been educated to understand the ramifications of having sex.
Right.
And yet they still did it, and they still did it without using protection. They still did it, and and now they use basically abortion as a form of contraception.
Right. But how do you know that rate wouldn't be higher? I just don't think that proves anything. How do you know that rate wouldn't be even higher if there were no sex ed?
Because I think you, obviously we can't tell because we're not undoing it. We can go back to there's a lot of variables like you're saying.
Yeah.
We can go back to the 70s and know that the rate was much lower.
We live in an X-rated society. I'm appalled at what's on TV these days.
Oh,
I can't
it's garbage,
believe what
yeah.
they show on
Oh, yeah.
TV.
No, I agree with you.
Are you familiar with the term latency period?
Latency period.
Latency, I believe is how it's spelled. If,
No.
if children are born without thinking about things of a sexual nature, and if they didn't live in an X-rated society, it would never cross their mind until they get past the latency period. And then they hit puberty.
What age is
and
the
everything.
latency period?
The latency period is the time before puberty when children are innocent and they
Right.
don't think about
okay.
things of a sexual nature because it's not part of their nature.
Right.
But
Oh, we're very over-sexualized in
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
and look at what happens. We didn't even mention the STDs being an epidemic.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Right.
was it you that was telling me about your child being born?
Oh, yeah, they just assume when you have a
Tell
child.
them what they did. Tell
Well,
you.
they put antibiotics in the child's eyes when they're born
Mm-hmm.
because they assume that the mother has an STD. And he was my sixth child. Been married over 20 years. My child did not need the antibiotics in his eyes, so
Right.
they finally they allowed me to not have them put in. So
Yeah, they just want to drug the kid off right off the get-go because the probability is that the
Right,
kid's got some
right.
sort of could have end up with a disease.
Now, I have a question. Now, in Texas, under Rick Perry's insistence, they teach abstinence in schools. And Texas has the second highest teen pregnancy rate in the
yeah,
country.
I don't
so
think they need to bring it. Just leave it alone. Out of sight, out of mind. I don't think they need to.
there is no out of sight, out of mind. Were you ever a teenager? Out of sight, out of mind? I was thinking about sex nonstop when I was 12.
Well,
I
you're
mean-
a boy.
Girls do too. Come
They're
on.
over 12. You can't trust them.
Maybe with girls it's 13. I don't
No, I
know.
know.
but
How long?
I don't know.
No,
out of sight, out of mind?
I don't
Really?
know. Well,
In
I
what
just-
universe?
I just don't think that it should be taught at all. Just don't have it in schools.
Yeah.
Go to school,
well,
learn to
it's-
read and write, and get smart.
You said Rick Perry is abstinence. How long have they been teaching that?
I don't know. I mean, he's been governor for 10 years. I don't know how long they've been teaching that, but I know
Right.
that it doesn't
Because,
work.
well, it depends on how long they've been teaching it.
And teaching teaching teenagers about abstinence, that's like trying to tell someone
Like,
don't
okay,
breathe.
like this is what
Kids
it
are
is
gonna
now.
have
Don't
sex.
do it.
Yeah.
Never do this.
That works. Yeah, you're right.
Never do this.
When telling a teenager, don't do right.
Yeah.
No, seriously, were you a teenager ever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, we digress again. So
We did get pretty far from Marxism, didn't we?
no, not really,
Well.
because the whole premise is that one of the things Marx wants to do, and Stalin and the rest of them, is to tear down the bonds of the family. If you want the state to be the end-all and be-all of everything,
Right.
you have to first break down the family,
Right.
because those are the bonds that children really learn a relationship with and respect for. They learn to respect their father and mother, and it's a natural thing to do.
Yeah.
So if you can dice that up, then they're looking around for something to look up to.
Right.
Okay, so then it's the state.
And for the state to take care of them, essentially.
And the state
Yeah.
to take care of them. That's why there's such a move to for earlier and earlier and earlier. They want to take, if you take it to what Marx would love to do is basically take your child from when it was born and raise it by the state.
Right.
And that's where we're headed over time. I mean, I remember being a little kid and all you did was play all the time. You go outside, you could do that, you could build forts. Now it's like kids can't even go outside because it's not even safe.
John Clayton had a really good article about being a kid. He grew up in Manchester. You read the Union Leader? Are we allowed to say that?
I don't read the Union Leader,
Okay.
but you're welcome to it.
Okay, but it was like a few weeks back. It was talking about being a kid in Manchester, and they were outside all day. They went in when the street light came on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, same thing with we just basically came in when it got. Well, I lived a little bit out. There was no streetlights.
Yeah.
So you just stayed out all the time.
Stayed out until it started getting dark. Well, I better head home. I'm getting hungry anyway.
Yeah.
Our parents didn't worry about us either. You can go outside and play as long as you wanted. And then today, if you don't hear from your child over 20 minutes, you panic. Where
Right.
is he? Who took him?
Yeah, so it is the idea that of the breakdown of the family, and we've talked about that in a show a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's all part and parcel. I don't necessarily look at it as a giant conspiracy. I think it's the result of a bunch of, it's like Jimmy Carter said, for those Republicans, I know I'm a Republican, I can't quote Jimmy Carter, but
It's okay.
Smile like Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter.
He's a good man.
Yeah, he was nuts. But one of the things he said that I use a lot, because it's very accurate in a paraphrasing, but he said that for those Republicans who want smaller government, realize that as the family breaks down, the government will necessarily grow to take its place. In the 70s, we had no-fault divorce, and I don't think that was necessarily a communist movement, but it did successfully dice up the family so profoundly that,
By making it easier?
oh yeah,
Is
much
that- okay,
easier. The
yeah.
idea was that it was part of the feminist movement, the Jane Fondas of the world and people like that who wanted to be liberated. What they ended up to being, people being liberated from is liberated from responsibility, not from, and liberty is really being responsible. It's the liberty to do the right thing, not the liberty to do whatever I want.
Right.
People have totally perverted the word
Yeah.
liberty to mean that, I should be able to smoke crack, in the nude in the frickin' center of town, and
I'm never going to live that down.
sorry, hey,
That was
do
you.
that.
That was-
I heard about that.
That was days ago, okay?
that was
Please.
days ago. I know.
Ugh.
Last week
I
is
moved
a
on.
long
Things you
time.
find out about people.
Yeah.
Tell you on a live show.
yeah.
In California they have, I want to say 50% divorce, but it's 50-50. You can marry a no good bum
Yeah.
and then try to divorce him, and if you're the one that works, you have to support 50% of
You have to
everything you
support
have.
the bum that doesn't
to the
want to
bum.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm moving out there. I think I can see a gold mine out there.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, no.
What are we going to do? How do you fix something like that?
How do you fix it? It's pretty. It's the same way it was destroyed, relentlessly. There's been attack on the family for the last 40 years, and it's been relentless. There's been an attack on the family in, if you go back to the time of Marx, from the industry, because industry was exploiting kids. I mean, my Republican friends, I belong to the House Republican Alliance, and some of my Republican friends are, business is almost like an absolute.
Sure.
It goes back to Ayn Rand, who wrote the Atlas Shrugs.
Yeah.
And in her book, they gave the owners of the capitalists basically this almost like pure or wonderful aura. Like they were almost moral in and of themselves because of their industry.
Yeah.
All right? And there's a lot of my friends that are Republicans that have that premise or believe that the
Sure.
industry is a great for motivator for good, when they're really not. They're just greedy.
Right.
And if you look at the fact that when Marx was writing this, they would actually, a business owner would actually exploit children to go into coal mines, children to work in
Yeah.
the factories, 10-year-old little teeny kids.
My grandmother,
Yeah,
she
Really?
had to work in a factory.
right.
Wow.
I mean,
She
that
used
that
to-
is so
She used to
profound.
go under the table and tie their people's shoelaces to the desks. And then
Good for a little bit of revenge.
I see where you get your little rebelliousness from. That starts at an early age and your family does it.
no, you said Atlas Shrugs. Where was I earlier this week? I was talking to somebody about Atlas Shrugs.
Yeah, it
So
is a cool book.
how do you spell that? ATLAS?
Atlas, like as in me. Shrugs as in.
Shrugs. Okay.
We got 2 minutes.
All right,
Okay, 2 minutes. So anyway, we're going to wrap it up. Good news on the political front, if we didn't mention already. SB 88 was passed they overrode the governor's veto. And next week
Yay.
we get to do it again.
Yes.
Janine and I are going to be voting for that. Get rid of that stupid restriction on your liberties.
No more ward birds are going to jail.
Maybe Gary will start bringing you chocolate.
Hey,
Now I
don't
get
don't
that.
tell my
I don't
wife
wanna get
though.
that.
Oh.
Next week Next week is cool. This is something you won't disagree with, Matt, because you liberal commie bastard. Nothing personal.
No.
I hope you don't take that.
I'm an independent and I'm a centrist.
I hope you don't take
but I
that.
understand.
I hope you don't take that the way in which it was intended.
I will, but it's okay.
It's okay.
It's fun to
okay.
disagree. I like
Yeah,
it.
it is,
That's
actually.
why I do this.
But anyway, next week we're talking about jury nullification. If you want to piss off a lawyer, watch next week. We're talking
Ooh.
about jury nullification. This aggravates the judiciary, the lawyers. It's a good show.
I'm intrigued.
Okay, so next week we've got Senator Fenton Groen and State Representative John Heichel, and we hope that we have you folks at home watching, because we call in with your questions, because jury nullification is one of the most awesome parts of the law that you never hear about. In fact, a few years ago in the legislature, we had I think we had a bill. Is that, no, that's a different one, okay. We could never get it through the Judiciary Committee. We could never get it through the Judiciary Committee. And it's an awesome thing. If we can get this through this year, it'll be just wonderful. And thank you very much, everybody, and have a good, thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janine.
Thanks.
And thanks, Karen, wherever you are.
She ran off.